And some of those costs were adjusted. In most cases, that adjustment is simply us looking at the opportunity to either replace valves that are failing or add additional valves on water main. The benefit of additional valves is it allows us to isolate smaller segments, so when we have a break, hopefully we can reduce the shut-offs to 2 to 3 blocks instead of 6 to 7 to 8. But the drawback of more valves is they need to be exercised and they need to be maintained, and so it's sort of this balancing act. In a perfect world, you might have one at every intersection, but then that means every year you have to give it, so we just try to balance the resources available, both staff and money, with how we ideally want the system to operate. So we've identified some places that we need to either replace existing or add some additional valves.
And is that in coordinated infrastructure?
Yep. So that water number, if you see it, if you compare it to last year's, it may have increased by $25,000 or $50,000, but and if you see that, that's either inflation or additional valves.
Okay, I have a finance question on water. So you think by 2022 we'll have sufficient balance to be issuing water revenue bonds, Mark, obviously, because that's here.
Where is it?
No, I wouldn't think so.
Because it's under revenue bonds.
Where are you, which page, please?
I'm on the coordinated infrastructure line
Okay.
26.
I am thinking at this point, for the last couple of years and the progress we've made, that it's our first real revenue bond opportunity. Probably gonna be the 2024 project for $750,000.
Okay.
I mean, I'm gonna see how the numbers go, but it does, again, you're balancing the potential credit rating of the water utility against the cost of borrowing money. And, our rate of return is just, it's capped, so I'm just not sure how much funding we can accumulate to feel confident that we're gonna get the credit rating we're hoping for on the water utility that would make me recommend revenue bonds.
Can I ask a question? So I just got back from ICC, I shared it with Rebecca before we entered the meeting, Mark, but I'm sure you look at this, and I'm just sharing it with the other board members, but the state trust fund, we had an update by the state treasurer, and they have like 400 million, they've only used 22 million since the inception, and you can apply it anytime. It's for any public purpose. It can be for water, it can be for anything that you would bond for. It could be for even, they did a homeless shelter, they've done fire stations, they've done garbage trucks, and they've never turned down a request ever to any municipality. And it's like at this time, it's like 3.6 interest rate. So I don't know, I don't understand interest rates, but if it was lower, I mean, is that something we could explore for some of our infrastructure projects? Because they mentioned laterals.
I think our GO debt would probably consistently perform better than the state trust fund loan for major bond issues. Smaller bond issues that, a larger portion of that is an issuance cost, or perhaps some interim revenue or utility financing. I think that would be a real good opportunity to look and
There's no
see how.
there's no
Okay,
penalty to
but on the
prepay.
okay, but on the water, we have to get approval from the PSC to raise the rates. So if we're not, even if we borrowed from the state trust fund, would we still have to go through the PSC process to raise the rates to pay it? And if it wasn't a water bond, it was from a state trust fund. If we're paying it with water revenue, we still have a PSC process, right?
Well, the challenge, when I speak of revenue bonds, is looking at our water utility as if it were a freestanding business. How robust is the cash flow in the water utility?
Mm-hmm.
And that is our weakness right now, because our infrastructure is so old, and the amount of work that we're doing is, we're starting, but, it's gonna take a lot of years.
Isn't there a reserve you need to, like 25%, like 1.25?
Well, I would prefer to have that money and not to borrow for that money and then set it aside. Because that's what you end up doing in many cases, you borrow the money to put your reserve on a special segregated account for bond reserves.
For revenue bonds, okay.
For revenue bonds. So, you know, as each year goes by, it's, our lines are so thin on the water utility that if we have 6 extra major main breaks, is a difference maker.
When do we go to the PSC and say we need to raise water rates because we have this many main breaks and because we wanna build up a reserve so we can issue bonds? I mean, isn't that the step?
Well, the
we need to
PSC
do?
will only allow us to raise our rates to the point to get a certain return on investment based on the value of our infrastructure, which is 1920s values for most of our systems.
Which includes the reserve, right, for revenue bonds?
Well, the debt service payment would be factored into that, any request, but we're
Okay,
maxed out right now because,
okay, can we, at some point soon, talk in finance committee about where we are with the water utility and, you know, just so, I don't think now's.
I'd be
the right-
happy to.
Now's not the right time, but I think we should talk about it before budget. Okay, let's move on to general infrastructure projects, now that we've blown our minds with the, yeah. So we do have Lark and New Hope finally getting done next year, we have alleys going along, sidewalks going along, our lateral, is that an increase? No, we had 200,000 a year last year for
I thought it was 150, but we
No.
didn't program.
It's a rounding number, our allocation the last couple of years has been about $95,000, which by village policy we match with, general revenue funds.
you know, this is another one of the presentation changes that staff has incorporated is, in prior years, you know, we've always taken the offsetting revenues and kind of put it after the bottom line of the project totals. And what we were hearing is that you'd like to see those revenue offsets reflected alongside the project schedule. So that's one of the things that we've tried to do now for the things that we feel a high degree of certainty about.
So street lighting LED, I know we talked about, I recall having a conversation about we should go ahead and do this because it's gonna be saving us money, so what happened with that one?
In prioritization?
Yeah.
Yep, I can attempt to answer that question.
Okay.
So, as we were doing engineering this past year for the street light cabinet replacement, we started to have some conversations about different types of technology. And to make a long story short, staff, and I believe you also, had sort of proceeded with the understanding that a street light, an LED conversion would be as simple as taking the fixture off the top of the pole and replacing it with an LED fixture.
Oh, that wasn't my understanding, go ahead.
Well, it is not that. And from very preliminary evaluation of conversion options, it seems that the most prudent way to go may include rewiring the entire village, which adds a significant and substantial cost to the estimates that we had previously outlined. And commitment. So, what we are doing right now is we have Strand doing a, we call it maybe a mid-level evaluation of our system and the wiring components and the current LED technology, kind of looking at, you know, what are we really chewing, what are we biting off here? I do expect, do you recall when I said they were gonna have that done? June, end of June. So I do expect to have that information available for your next long-range financial plan discussion. But at this point, I do not.
Is that why it's in red? Just.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it was 500,000 and then you would come back to us and let us know what a new
Well,
estimate is.
I think what I see happening is we would come back to you with a couple of options and say, okay, so we can do this at this cost, and these are the benefits and these are the drawbacks, or we can do this, you know, et cetera.
Okay.
So that's the conversation that I would like to have with you. So we kind of, not we, I, put the brakes on the streetlights, conversion steps, because I was uncomfortable making that sort of a commitment without having that discussion with you.
Okay, just so we understand. Are there any other questions about LED?
And
Well,
so,
I have one above it, but go ahead.
so I'm assuming, I mean, obviously, once we have that conversation, we will know a little more about the timeline and
Absolutely.
timeframe, what, I'm assuming all of
Absolutely.
that will dictate.
Well, to some degree, you know, what you, the preferences that you express
Sure.
will dictate that timeline.
Right, okay.
All right, I just want to point out that we had a work plan that included that, and if we're no longer doing that, then do we need to update the work plan?
We should.
My work plan has been updated to reflect that change.
Well, I'm just saying, you know, when we set up a work plan and we are told to stay within the lines, so when something changes, I'm just throwing that out there. Did you have something about LED lighting?
I was scratching my neck.
I just wanted, I don't know if we just skipped over it, we were going to go down, but streetlight boxes, it looks like there's only 3 left.
Yes, but
Okay.
that all ties together.
But we've been doing, there was 11 total, right?
I believe we had that number off. I believe there are 8 total.
So we've done 5.
No, we have done 1.
So, but, okay, but there's 1, 2, only 3 in this plan.
Or 50,000.
50,000.
Oh, is that why? Okay,
Yep.
thank you. And then my last question was sidewalks. I can't remember who I talked to, it was you, Leanne or Mark, but does this 150 actually cover, if you do it for four quadrants, does that actually, do we get every sidewalk done that we need to by the time the 4th quadrant is done? I thought someone had told me, I don't remember if it was you, Leanne or Mark,
Isn't
but
it
that
6?
doesn't,
It's not 4.
There-
whatever the quadrants are, but I'm just saying.
There are 5 areas, 5 or 6. No, because we don't,
Right.
it's not wholesale replacement, it's need-based replacement.
But I'm saying, do we get to all the need-based with that
Yes.
funding level?
Well, that funding level is a bit artificial because it's a special assessments. So it's really a placeholder budget number.
In ours is.
It really just depends what's out there. I mean, it might be $100,000 worth of assessments, it might be $300,000.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
And project costs will correlate with
Yeah.
that.
So it'd be great to get an update of, like, maybe every 5 years, every 4 years, just how much we spent on sidewalk replacement, you know, I'm just
How
saying.
much,
I just assumed it was 150.
when you say we, do you mean
I guess the,
the collective we?
Yes.
Or the we that
that,
Right.
whatever C has
Yeah.
is 150, what the actual.
expense is the expense. I mean,
Yeah.
there's an offsetting revenue from the assessment,
Yeah.
but there's the
But
expense
it's
is
not
the
there.
expense.
It's
Yeah, we can give you, just a summary
Yeah.
of.
the
all
last 5
project
years
costs.
or
Yep.
every 4 years or something.
Okay, which gets to the conversation we've had about project-based, having budgets for projects. Since we had a budget for alleys, then we can look back and see how much we've actually spent on alleys, how much we've actually spent on sidewalks, whatever, okay. North Shore Capital's same, Hubbard parking lot looks a little bit less.
Is North Shore Capital staying that rate? North Shore Fire?
From a long-range plan perspective, you know, we're not trying to
Doesn't increase the rate.
predict any substantial changes, but, you know, we'll update that as we see that coming.
I mean, I would assume that's gonna go up with the renovations to Whitefish Bay MR station.
That is a completely different,
Oh, it's
Animal.
different, okay. Is this just for apparatus?
yes.
Okay.
Capital expenses.
Okay, DPW
Do
facilities.
you wanna get in the Hubbard?
Yeah, can we talk a little bit about Hubbard?
Sure. So the amount that you have here is a reconstruction of the lot in its current configuration.
Okay,
We do have a conceptual option to increase the lot size by 20 spaces, 31 spaces, at not quite, no, more.
But do we,
How much?
is there a need for that? I just don't know anything about Hubbard parking lot.
I think that depends who you ask,
Right.
right? On a Tuesday afternoon, is there a need for that?
Right.
No.
What's the maximum need?
On a Saturday?
They're parked up on more, just a little bit.
So it really, you know, the benefit would be to, primarily to the leaseholder.
Yeah,
Yes.
charge them.
But also the river park, I mean, people park in that lot and go up to this
Just
field.
soccer.
Yeah.
So what's, do we have any idea what the ballpark of how much more it would be?
We do,
And we can't raise the lease rate for another 11 years, correct? So,
I understand.
at the time the expansion concept number was done, they were estimating at $400,000. I would think at this point, it might be a little light, because that was probably 5 years ago.
what does it say? 250, so double.
That's,
So close to double would be my conservative estimate.
And I know it's just purely conceptual, but where would those additional spaces go?
Essentially, what would happen is that we would have to build a retaining wall along the walkway along the curb that goes under,
Mhm.
and that wall would have to be right up against the sidewalk, and that would provide additional space on top.
And you take out the middle.
And you
pretty
take
much.
out the
All the greenery.
the
benches
cobblestones
and all that
that's
stuff.
there
that
now.
are really, I looked at them the other weekend, they're really bad shape.
Otherwise, you just take everything out and resurface it, or what's the 250?
Well, the 250 would be, you do some curb repair, maybe replace curbs, but the footprint, the layout basically doesn't
What happens to
change.
the cobblestone?
Yeah.
They come out and they go back as concrete. Or a
So-
walkway would go back as concrete, it may not have to be as large as, you know, like, that whole area is pavers now, you could maybe just put a walkway through.
I'm okay with keeping it the same size until 10 years from now, if we want to, for the next reconstruction.
I mean,
I'm gonna be able to do these.
personally, I would rather spend the extra money for like a nice kayak launch or, you know, a boating thing at the park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know Wes and I are still looking for a bocce court.
I knew that was gonna, took you a while to
I
figure
know, I was
out.
waiting for it, there it is, and we should go west now too. I know,